The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, April 23rd. I hope everybody is having a phenomenal week. It's going by fast. It's going by fast. All right, we will be talking today about Trump's retreat. Everyone says, retreat from what? Well, from his commitment to, anyway, from previous things that he said, which is not surprising at all. I could have called it Trump's surrender. He hasn't quite yet surrendered. It's on the way, though. Trump's changing his mind again, but then there's nothing new about that. He changes his mind all the time. Since he has no views, opinions, or principles, it's not surprising. We'll talk about China and the trade war with China. We'll talk about the brain drain that's happening in the world out there, which direction it's going. Kind of interesting. Ukraine, you know, one of the retreats is, if they don't agree to the deal I'm proposing, I'm not playing anymore with Ukraine and Russia. I will talk about Iran. We'll see how that's a retreat as well. Tesla, or Elon Musk, a little bit of a retreat there. And finally, we'll talk about the FDA saving you from, well, we'll see. Saving your life. All right. So Jennifer says, what mind? You have to have a mind in order to change it. You guys are even more anti-Trump than I am. God. Indec says hello from Russia. God, I have people listening to the show in Russia. Just don't tell Putin what I say. Let's see. All right, so we'll be talking about all those things and more probably. Remind you to use the Super Chat feature to ask questions, make comments, make suggestions, disagree with me. But Super Chat is what I actually read and what I can actually see, so please use that as the way with which to communicate with me, at least. You can communicate with each other on the chat. I think I kicked a can of hornets yesterday when I covered Douglas Murray and Dave Smith. Oh my God, so many comments. Everybody hates me, which is not surprising. All the fans of Dave Smith are out in mass on my videos commenting. It really gives one a real interesting perspective on the world, reading the comments that people are writing on that video. The hatred of Israel, the hatred of Israel, the perverse morality or moral position people are taking, and the hatred of expertise, the hatred of any kind of screening of who's on and who's not. I still find it interesting, right, that the one set of ideas that Joe Rogan will not entertain. Pretty much entertain anything on the show. One set of ideas he won't is objectivism. He won't have me. He won't have. I don't think he's had Alex. Alex has been on everybody, and Joe Rogan hasn't had Alex. So anyway. Yes, if you're interested in seeing what's going on in terms of the world out there, check out the comment section on my on the last few videos we published on the whole Dave Smith, Douglas Murray thing. Dave Smith has a huge and very active and very engaged and very passionate following, and maybe that is maybe we can learn from that. Passionate, engaged following. We need more of that. We need more passion, more engagement. What else do I want to tell you? Yes, I will be in Michigan on Tuesday at Northwood University in the evening. I'll be giving a talk on the Enlightenment and Western civilization. The talk is not going to be consistent with the title, I think. I don't know how I got that title. The title's kind of boring. I understand why why I'm not getting a bigger audience, because the title's kind of boring. Anyway, I'll be talking about Western civilization, what it is, and its origins in the Enlightenment, and why the Enlightenment is so important, and so on. So I hope a bunch of you show up. So please come if you're in Michigan. Michigan, make the drive. What the hell? You know, driving is good for you, according to FDA. I'm kidding. All right, that's then, and then I'll fill you in my various talks in the UK. That'll be later in May. I'll be at York, which is open to the public, and I'll also be at this festival, the Arts, the Philosophy and Music Festival, the biggest one in the world. I'll be doing 5 different things there. You should come. It's in Wales, in beautiful Wales. And maybe this time it won't rain and the sun will shine and it'll be an amazing event. And you guys should come. Great to meet you, and I think you'll have a good time. So I'll get you information about that in the days and weeks to come. All right, let's jump in. So markets are up again today. I keep looking, right? Markets are up nicely again, another 2%. This is good. We're slowly my portfolio is inching up, and I'm regaining some of what I've lost. And today, again, like yesterday, pretty healthy. The Nasdaq's up 2.5%. Gold is down. That's a good sign. The euro is down, which means the dollar is up, so the value of the dollar is going up. 10-year bond, pretty stable. The yield was down earlier, which would have been good, but it's close to zero right now in terms of unchanging. But the dollar's up against the pound. Dollar's up against the Deutschmark. There's the Deutschmark. Up against the yen. So generally good. You know, interest rates maybe a little down, dollar up, and stocks are up. I'm good with that. Why? 2 days in a row now. Significant gains in the marketplace. What is going on? I mean, what's driving this? Well, I mean, it's simple. The people in the marketplace keep seeing Donald Trump backtrack on what he said he would do. And since what he said he would do, or started to do, since the stuff he started to do was so unbelievably destructive, so unbelievably horrible for the U.S. economy, so unbelievably horrible for for Americans, both in the short run, medium run, and long run, that Donald Trump backing off of that even a little bit is good news. And the stock market goes up and the dollar gets stronger. Now, you could argue the market's overreacting because Trump hasn't done anything. He's just suggested he might do. But for example, yesterday, he'd already indicated this in the past, but yesterday he was firm on this. He said he had no intention of firing Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Now, remember, Trump has continuously and repeatedly hit out at the Fed chairman that he's not that smart, that he's always late, that he won't cut interest rates, that he's really bad. He last week, he thought that dismissing him would be good, and that he has the power to do that, and that he plans to do that. And then the market kind of imploded as a consequence of that, and now he's changed his mind. He said yesterday, I don't want to talk about that because I have no intention of firing him. Now, this is the problem with the market. The market hears that and says, cool, he has no intention of firing him, forgetting that it's Donald Trump, and tomorrow he could change his mind. So that's part of what has caused the market to go up, is Trump is not going to fire Jay Powell. Second, number of signals out there that Trump is going to moderate when it comes to tariffs, in particular tariffs on China. Trump had a meeting with the CEOs of the big retail companies, right? I mean, Walmart, Target, and Home Depot. And the CEOs of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot basically told Trump that tariffs and trade policy generally are going to completely disrupt supply chains, raise prices, and empty shelves. Now, economists have been telling Trump this like for 10 years. I mean, people who understand markets have been telling Trump this for 10 years. But now he's done it, and now the only people he really has any semblance of respect for, the only people who he's willing to listen to, not economists, not even his own economists, not people he's appointed as chief economic advisor or treasury secretaries. The only people he's really willing to actually consider what they say are other business leaders. And I think the CEOs of Walmart, Target, and Home Depot basically conveyed a sense of real dire situation. Things were really bad. And these tariffs were unbelievably disruptive. Again, shouldn't have surprised anybody. Anybody with half a brain shouldn't have been surprised. But Trump, for some reason, is surprised that, I don't know, 145% tariff on China is going to disrupt supply chains and going to empty shelves and going to raise prices. And again, this is in a short run, medium run, and long run. There's no positive long run. There's no prices going way down in the long run. This is a permanent or increase. It's not a permanent increase in magnitude, but it's permanent that it's increasing. I mean, these retailers will find alternative supply chains. They'll find alternative suppliers, but it's going to be higher cost. Otherwise, they would have gone with those alternatives to begin with. And then, of course, it's not only China tariffs. So even if they're now buying it from Vietnam, well, Vietnam had its 10% tariff and a threat of, was it 60% tariff? I think 60% tariff of Vietnam before the pause. So as a consequence of all this, you know, the administration is trying to signal that things are going to get better. Don't worry. We're not too serious about all this, even though they've done it already, right? Tariffs up 145%. Ships that are arriving now in American ports from China, unloading their goods, being tariffed at 145%. So Treasury Secretary yesterday said, look, this trade war is not sustainable. You know, we're going to have to de-escalate, and you know, we need a trade deal. And at a conference hosted by J.P. Morgan, he said that he expected Washington and Beijing to reach a deal in the very near future. Note that Beijing is like, we're not going to initiate anything, and we're not going to negotiate under threat. So this optimism is, you know, and usually trade deals, it usually takes from the minute you start negotiating till the end of a trade deal when it's approved and signed and everything's done, it takes about 5 years. Just the initial negotiations and to get a deal that can then go in front of different politicians takes 8 months. So imminent? Yeah. Anyway, Bassett is trying to calm markets and try to tell them, don't worry, there's a deal. It's going to be made. We're not too serious. And then President Trump said that he planned to be, quote, very nice to China in any trade talks. Then why are you raising tariffs to 145%? Why not be very nice to China right off the bat? What is this? What is the point of doing this in order to be very nice to them? The whole point is, if you're going to raise tariffs and start a trade war, I thought it was to be really tough with them. And he said that he thought tariffs would drop if the two countries can reach a deal. How much will they drop? He said that tariffs will come down substantially, but won't be zero. Trump has never wanted zero tariffs. Trump has never expressed the interest, the will to actually negotiate with other countries to establish free trade of zero reciprocal. He doesn't believe in that. He does not believe in that. So, you know, he says we're going to be very nice, and they're going to be very nice, and we'll see what happens. This is out of the deal. Anyway, I mean, it's now today. Trump said to reporters, maybe this was yesterday, that tariffs are going to come down substantially, even in the near run. As we start talking to them, they're going to come down significantly. And some people are talking about tariffs on China to be cut in half. In half. I guess they hope Walmart, Target, but think about what cutting it in half means. Like you go from 145 to 72 and a half. Like 72 and a half is insane. 72 and a half, I'm doing the math wrong. 62 and a half. I mean, that's still insanely high. No, I was right, 72 and a half, 145. Insanely high. So you're cutting them in half to achieve what? The shelves are still going to be empty. Supply chains are still going to be completely disrupted. So the market is responding like this to the fact that Trump wants to lower Chinese tariffs in the short run to 72 and a half. And he'll be very nice to Chinese when they negotiate, but who knows when negotiations will start, because they certainly haven't started yet. Maybe it's because Bassett said, I quote, "I wish to be clear, America first does not mean America alone." Doesn't it? Anyway, to the contrary, it is a call for deeper collaboration and mutual respect among trade partners. I mean, how flaky, I'm being nice here, how flaky does Bassett have to be to say that America first means deeper collaboration and mutual respect among trading partners after what Trump has done over the last month, where he has shown no respect, no eagerness to collaborate, nothing. I mean, nothing. He's treated our trade partners, our military alliance partners, he's treated them like dirt to be trodden on and disrespected. But no, what we really want is deep collaboration and mutual respect. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. I mean, how this is the thing. People say, Yaron, you need to run for president. You see, I can't do that. I couldn't say that with a straight face. I couldn't say it with a straight face. So, so we are now, I mean, think about it. If we're reducing tariffs to 72.5%. When Trump initially proposed 10% universal and 60% on Chinese goods, which he did on the campaign trail, economists modeled that out, and even 60% plus the 10%, that's 70. That is a catastrophe of trade. Now, again, markets will find ways around it. They'll do their magic. But that takes time. And to the extent that these tariffs hold, they're going to disrupt and destroy wealth on a significant scale, in spite of the fact that everybody says, oh, trade is only 14% of GDP. I don't think that's a right measure. I don't think that's the right way to measure this. So many products, the good imported might be of very low value, so it counts very little towards GDP, but the final good cannot be produced without it. And therefore, this is incredibly disruptive to a much higher number in terms of GDP. So it is interesting, though, somebody points this out on Twitter, that yesterday, Bassett goes in front of a bunch of financiers, hedge funds, pension plans, endowments, and investment bankers, people who trade in the market, and tells them, wink, wink, don't worry, we're going to scale back tariffs. markets are going up, basically telling them, yeah, you can buy. Yeah, don't worry. And those comments don't make it public until kind of after the market closes. I mean, there's so many ways in this which this administration is uniquely corrupt. Uniquely corrupt. Here's an example, just one more example of this. According to, I'm not sure. According to, there is the old steel tariffs, the steel tariffs from, according to research, according to the steel tariffs from 2018, I think, 2018, the steel and aluminum tariffs, those tariffs brought 425,000 requests for exemptions. I'm not kidding you. 425,000 requests for exemptions, of which 200,000 were granted, mostly because of political contributions and donations and expressions of support. 200,000 exemptions. Now the tariffs are so much more on so many more goods, on so many more countries. Can you imagine how many exemption requests are going to be filed and how much money, whether in the form of suitcases of cash, probably not, but in the form of political contributions and donations and just all kinds of other favors that might be involved? Can you imagine how big that is? I mean, this is like taking the existing swamp and like growing it and feeding it, and like there were only like, I don't know, 100,000 animals, and now increasing it to 1 million animals, swamp creatures, I guess, swamp creatures. I mean, let's be very clear. Trump loves the swamp. He is the swampiest of all presidents. He loves handing out favors to lobbyists and donors and people who want to have lunch with him or dinner with him. Indeed, he might even phrase the lowering of tariffs now on, as a favor to the CEOs of Walmart. See, I did it for you, you guys. Now, in the meantime, the White House says that they are close to deals with Japan and India. Indeed, J.D. Vance today, supposedly in India giving a speech, outlined the scale of a India-U.S. new trade agreement. And what I noticed, it was outlining what's going to be in it. All of it included India committing to buying more U.S. stuff. And that's what they really want, right? They don't care. Tariffs are not the issue. They want trade deficits gone with each country, not even globally, with each country. So right now, the U.S. imports more from India than it exports to India, and they want India to buy more U.S. stuff so it can balance. And I guess through this negotiation so far, India appears to be committed to $500 billion worth of stuff by 2030. By 2030. Will they live up to it? We'll notice that by 2030, Trump won't be in office. Will they live up to it? Remember the deal Trump cut with China towards the end of his first term that China never lived up to? Will India ever live up to importing $500 billion, even if it doesn't make sense for them to import $500 billion? Will they live up to it because they signed a deal with the U.S.? Is there going to be a deal with the U.S.? Maybe there's an outline now, but I mean, the devil is usually in the details. When is that deal going to actually materialize? As I said, these deals take months and months and months to negotiate. Then they take, months and months and months to get feedback from all the different swamp animals in the swamp, lobbyists and government departments and regulators and politicians, and then they typically have to be approved by Congress. So these things take a long time. But again, the White House is trying to tell everybody. Remember 90 deals in 90 days? Remember that one? They were going to do 90 deals in 90 days. If they get 5 deals in 90 days, that'll be something. And the deals are not going to be deals. The deals will be, they'll announce outlines, they'll announce intentions, they'll announce plans. Just like this Japan and India tariff agreement. Japan, in the meantime, is saying, we don't have an agreement with the U.S. We don't know what they want. We have no idea what's going on. And by the way, we're not going to be bullied. We're not going to be bullied. The U.S. is not going to get everything it wants. So, what agreement? What deal? Anyway, that's the rhetoric, all meant to calm markets, all meant to say, oh, no, Trump is backing off. Trump is retreating from his toughness. And look, all these countries, they're groveling before us. It's just a marketing campaign. It's a marketing campaign to try to convince the financial markets that things are not going to be not as bad as they pretend, as they say they are. The market's buying it so far. The market's buying it so far. Yeah, I mean, we keep hearing how great progress they're making on these deals, just like they kept saying they were making great progress with deals with Russia and Ukraine, and nothing's happened there. 24 hours did pass, and yet we didn't get a deal. Yeah, so let's see, anything else? Yeah, I mean, the negotiating with Europe, but the Trump administration seems to think there's something wrong with the VAT, and they want these countries to do away with the VAT on American goods. And basically, that's not going to happen. Europe is basically saying, you got to be kidding. VAT is a form of consumption tax on everything people consume, American or non-American goods. So they're not going to agree on VAT. And then the other thing is, there's certain non-negotiables that the Europeans are very clear about, like agriculture subsidies. Now, America has huge, massive agriculture subsidies. So demanding that Europe gets rid of its subsidies is pretty hypocritical. I mean, when the U.S. has huge subsidies as well. But they're not going to do away with the agriculture subsidies. There would be a revolution in Europe. I mean, the European farmers are super politically connected, influential, and willing to go onto the streets, as we've seen in the past, in order to make sure that their interests are protected. So there's nothing. So there are these supposedly negotiations, but as the Europeans are saying, just like the Japanese, we don't even know what the Americans want. Blaze has a good point. He says, why do trade deals take so long? Couldn't Trump just accept Vietnamese offer of zero tariffs hypothetically for us? Yeah. I mean, I don't believe you should have trade deals at all. I think you should just have zero tariffs and finished. And let other people tax their own people. You don't have to tax yourself in order to do a deal. So yes, I mean, and if Vietnam is coming to the U.S. and saying, hey, we'll do zero tariffs if you do zero tariffs, yeah, it would be easy. Just do it. But that's not what Trump wants, and it's not what any of these deals are like. If you've ever looked at these deals, they have hundreds of exemptions. They have all kinds of tariff schedules. Like, for example, imagine, I don't know if Vietnam is a big, I'm sure Vietnam, for example, produces a lot of rice. Well, imagine that we had zero tariffs we had an agreement and we were negotiating about zero tariffs, and Vietnam says, yeah, we can sell you rice, zero tariffs. And American rice farmers are like, whoa, we don't want to compete with Vietnamese rice. That's crazy. Do you know how they treat their people? And by the way, they're still communists, and it's just wrong. And national security, if we get all our rice from Vietnam, what happens if we go to war and there's no rice? We need to protect American rice. And so you get an exemption. Okay, we'll have zero tariffs on everything except rice. And then what's the next thing? And the next thing. And the next thing. And Vietnam says, well, if you're going to tariff our rice, we want to tariff your, wheat or something. And if you look at these trade deals, and the trade deals, look, the trade deals we have today, like NAFTA and the trade deal with South Korea, and the trade deal we have with other countries around the world, they're good trade deals in the sense that they lowered tariffs and they lowered non-tariff barriers to entry. But they didn't drive them to zero because the United States doesn't want them to be zero. Trump heavily criticized NAFTA, but Trump is the one who negotiated NAFTA 2.0. He's the one who negotiated it in his last term. He signed it. His people negotiated it. If he's critical of NAFTA, he's critical of himself. And that, we know, it cannot exist because Trump cannot be critical of himself. That is an impossibility. So, you could just have zero tariffs for everybody, but then the other thing they negotiate in trade deals is subsidies. They negotiate non-tariff trade barriers. I'll give you an example of a non-tariff trade barrier. Baby food from Europe entering the United States. You cannot import baby food from Europe unless the FDA has specifically approved that baby food. It doesn't matter that the equivalent of FDA has approved it in Europe. It's still true that you have to give FDA approval for every baby food you import from Europe. Now, it's expensive if you're a baby food manufacturer. It's expensive to get your baby food, approved by the FDA. So you just don't import baby food from Europe. And that's why, if you remember, 2 years ago, we had a huge baby food shortage in the United States because one of the baby food manufacturers in the US had to shut down a plant, and suddenly the supply of baby food collapsed. And instead of being able to import baby food from Europe, it's good baby food, and the FDA equivalent is just as rigorous as ours. We couldn't, and therefore people were panicked. I mean, there was a real shortage of baby food. I mean, parents couldn't even, if you fly to Europe, stuff your suitcase with baby food and fly back to the United States, you could get in deep, deep trouble. You could get arrested. You're smuggling. It's illegal. It's illegal to bring European baby food into the United States. But that's the state of the world. And that's not the state of the world Trump is trying to fix. If Trump was trying to fix that, I would be in complete support. If Trump really wanted zero tariffs, lower trade barriers, more trade, more imports into the United States, more trading in the world, then I would say, great, let's figure out how to do that. But Trump has no interest in that. And if you look at his advisors on trade issues, at least, they're mercantilists. They want the United States to be, quote, self-sufficient. What does bring manufacturing back home mean? It means not trading. It means building everything at home. It also means poverty. It means financial distress. It means a horrible economy. But that's what they're driving at. That's what they want. It's not that they want. I wish what they actually wanted was free trade, and this is all just a negotiating tactic, as we're told all the time by everybody. But that's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie. It's been shown to be a lie over and over and over again, and they admit it. They admit that that's not the goal. They want to reindustrialize, which is the dumbest idea in economics today. All right, let's talk a little bit about China, right? Where China is with regard to this trade war. I talked about this last time, or talked about a while ago, that China is much better prepared for this trade war than we are. China has, realized that this was a possibility. It has invested in industries that it depends on the United States for. It has the ability to pivot, for example, on agricultural products for other countries. I mean, China faces real economic problems. I mean, if we had a decent president, if we had a president who knew what they were doing, we could actually put a lot of pressure on China right now, and I think get it to open up, or to, for example, everybody talks about they steal our IP. I think we could get real compromises from the Chinese on IP and on things that are objectively not good about what China does, because China's in trouble. It's got a real estate market that has basically collapsed, and it was the economic driver of the Chinese economy over the last 10 years. China is invested heavily in industrial policy, in industrial parks, in urban planning, in massive infrastructure. In other words, a lot of government, a lot of centralization, and a lot of it has not gone well. Chinese consumers don't feel wealthy. Indeed, they are consuming. They have shrunk their consumption over the last few years because they're worried about the future. They're worried about jobs. They're worried about their wealth. Chinese individuals, Chinese people, lost a lot of money on this real estate collapse. This is not just some hypothetical economic thing. This is something where people had invested huge amounts of their wealth and they're saving for retirement. And remember that China has, this is kind of funny, and I don't know if you guys know this, but China doesn't really have a welfare state. Maybe I should say that again. China really doesn't have a welfare state. China doesn't have mass redistribution of wealth. It doesn't provide people with Social Security when they retire. It doesn't have Medicare or Medicaid. And if you can't pay a hospital bill in China, there's a good chance you will not get treatment and you will die. And they don't care. So Chinese people save a lot, partially because they have to. Because if they don't save for retirement, they won't be a retirement. They don't have well-developed pension plans, 401ks, things like that. And a lot of that money went into, a lot of the Chinese people's money went into homes. They bought apartments to speculate on real estate. And then the real estate market collapsed. And those apartments, often they paid in advance for apartments that hadn't been built, they collapsed and disappeared. And so China's in trouble economically, financially, and the Chinese people know it. Now, the trade war with China is not going to help China. It's not going to help the United States. It's a lose-lose proposition. But I think in this case, in spite of China's economic problems, in this case, I think China loses less than the U.S. And any deal the U.S. makes with China is probably going to be worse than a deal we could have made without all these tariffs. I mean, literally, these tariffs on China have no value. No value. Anything you wanted to achieve rationally, you could achieve much better with other tools. And I will make a prediction that there will be no improvement in IP protection, no improvement in IP protection when we have a deal with China, whatever that means. So China has a problem. It's way too centralized. But it can't give up centralization, because if it gives up centralization, it gives up the party, the Communist Party gives up its authority. And the one thing the Chinese won't do, Chinese government won't do, is give up the centrality and the authority of the Chinese Communist Party. So, I mean, but this is the problem with that, right? So China's invested a huge amount of money in becoming as close as they can be to technologically self-sufficient. They've invested in chip manufacturing. They've invested in a lot of the tech that they need in order to keep advancing. And they've invested generally. They just spend a huge amount of money on technology. And yet, there's no evidence that the kind of technological investment that China's made has paid off economically. Now, it's paying off in terms of less reliance on the United States for the purposes of a trade war. But from an actual increasing productivity, from actual growth in the economy, it's not paid off. If you look at the GDP data, it's very clear that as they have achieved technological successes, GDP growth rate has actually trended down rather than up. And that makes complete sense, because that's what central planning does. It's not giving you productivity enhancing technology. It's not giving you technology demanded by the market. It's giving you what somebody in a stinky office in Beijing thinks will be good, and maybe it probably isn't. So productivity is actually slowing in China. It's not just not growing or not going fast. It's actually slowing. Productivity is going down. They've got real problems, which we could take advantage of to get a really good trade deal if we had any concept, any clue. Of how to negotiate, which Trump does not. Trump, as I did a whole show about, Trump is the worst negotiator ever. I can't think of anybody who's worse than Trump in negotiating on behalf of the United States. So China needs a lot of exports. It doesn't necessarily need exporting to the United States, but needs a lot of export. It can probably replace some of what the United States is not buying with other countries. But its real problem is authoritarianism, centrally planned economy that is resulting in consumer sentiment that is way down. And, you know, they've got to deal with Trump now. So while China's better situated than the U.S. with regard to this trade deal, trade conflict, they're not in good shape. They're not in good shape at all. And this bodes ill for the global economy more broadly. And ultimately, if the economy of the world, and generally the economy is win-win, if China doesn't do well economically, it impacts the rest of the world as well, including the United States. Now, we could de-link with China, but the way to de-link is not through tariffs. We can talk about how to de-link with China, but that's not through tariffs. All right, reminder to ask questions. Ask questions, support the show with stickers. Find ways to support the show. This is a show that is made possible only because of contributions from people like you. Okay, a few quick stories here. One of the consequences of the Trump administration, and this is another one of these, we'll see how this plays out ultimately, but one of the consequences of all the craziness around cutting grants at universities in the STEM, cutting grants at the HHS for medical research. The government shouldn't be funding science, but in a world where, where everything is so regulated, everything is so controlled, and government is the primary funder of science, slashing that first in your efforts to reform the government has dire consequences. One of those is a brain drain. The potential for U.S. researchers, scientists, to go overseas to do their science because they can get funding over there and they can't get funding in the U.S. In particular, if those scientists are immigrants. And if you add up the drying up of funds for research with the hostility towards immigration, and you can see why some scientists are motivated to move. Now, as a consequence, for example, France has just announced a new platform called Choose France for Science, which will enable universities, schools, and research organizations to apply for co-funding from the government to host researchers. Now, they don't literally say researchers from America, but that's clearly what it's targeted at. It's going to launch on May 5th. And basically, the idea is that France is committed, they say in this application, France is committed to standing up against attacks on academic freedom across the globe, they mean in America, and it prepares for a wave of mobile researchers whose funds have been cut. It invites universities to present projects in particular areas such as health research, climate and biodiversity, artificial intelligence, space studies, agriculture, low-carbon energy, and digital systems. They can have other climate scientists. I'll give them that deal. Marseille University has seen a flood of applications since it announced a program in March to host researchers from the United States threatened by cuts to funding. The president is also advocating for the creation of a new status of refugee scientist. Now imagine, Americans are applying for political asylum in France. There's an irony for you. It's a little nuts. In addition, we have Norway has just launched a scheme to lure top researchers away from U.S. universities. The Research Council in Norway has launched a 100 million krone fund for investment in projects for U.S. researchers to come to Norway to engage in. And now, of course, calling for protection of academic freedom, because I mean, the whole academic freedom is perverse the way people think of it. But this is what they're doing. They're trying to lure American scientists to Norway, and this is happening all over Europe. It's happening all over Europe, and we haven't seen it yet. I think this is probably all exaggerated, and a lot of this is more for publicity than anything else. But, we might see a brain drain out of the United States if the attitude towards science, particularly at the HHS, I mean, who the hell wants to apply for grants that are going in front of the HHS run by RFK? Particularly if you're doing, I don't know, mRNA vaccine research. You certainly don't want to be in the United States right now. There's a Belgium university, I can't pronounce it, in Brussels, that's also opened up new postdoc positions targeted at Americans. The Netherlands says it plans to launch a fund to attract research there. So yeah, European countries are making a big deal right now of making this an issue and trying to attract Americans there. We'll see if it works or it has any kind of impact. All right, we are getting now information about this deal that the Trump administration has basically proposed to Ukraine. Russia seems fairly sympathetic to this deal, but the Ukrainians seem not. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but it does seem like this deal that would freeze the positions of the armies where they are today, would basically grant Russia Crimea. At least the U.S. would recognize Crimea as Russian, thus rewarding Putin for his aggression. But it would also reward Putin for his aggression in Donetsk and Kherson and some of the other two provinces, because it would freeze them as well. Russia is suggesting that they might have other demands, but that they're open to this deal. Sure, they get everything they want. Oh, and lifetime ban for Ukraine to enter NATO. So this is basically a surrender deal. These are the terms by which Ukraine needs to surrender to Russia. And Trump is facilitating Ukraine's surrender to Russia. Of course, a big part of this deal is doing away with all the sanctions on Russia, opening up energy deals. The United States, of all the countries in the world, the Trump administration seems most eager, most excited, most willing to compromise in order to train with Russia, with an enemy of the United States. That is their priority. Trade with the enemy. This would be a disaster for Ukraine. It would only set it up for a renewed invasion by Russia once Russia felt a little richer because of all the trade with the United States. Once Russia replenished its arm reserve, replenished its soldiers, this would just embolden Russia because they got most of what they wanted. Why not invade again? They'll get another piece of territory. An American president will say, oh, okay, you can have that. What the hell? We'll recognize it. It's truly shameful and despicable that this is what America is promoting and pushing. Zelensky so far is pushing back, particularly on the idea that the United States would recognize Crimea. He basically said Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about there. This is against our Constitution. He rejects the idea of any kind of permanency to Russian occupation of the other territories. So now, there's a sense in which the Americans have dropped this peace deal in front of the Ukrainians to deal with. Secretary of State Rubio is skipping the next stage of Ukrainian ceasefire talks, in a sense, because Ukraine rebuffed Trump's proposal and is basically saying, okay, well, if this is how you can behave, we're out of here. And that's the message from the Trump administration, that they are going to move on. They're going to forget about the peace deal. They're going to forget about the deal and walk away. Trump, of course, today went on the attack on Zelensky, never attacks Putin. Isn't that curious? Isn't that curious? I don't know. You guys who support Trump, isn't it curious in your mind that he never attacks Putin? Never says a bad word about Putin? Even when he says something, it's couched as very soft terms. He's 1,000 times tougher on Zelensky. Because, and it's obvious, Trump is acting here as Putin's agent. He is doing Putin's bidding. And in that, the enemy, the challenge, the problem is not Putin. The problem is Zelensky. So he might move on in spite of the fact, this is another way in which he's retreating, in spite of the fact that he promised a peace deal. He's eager to move on. And what he promised was a peace deal, not a surrender deal. Although I always knew that that's what he meant. I told you this before the election, that he would abandon Ukraine. He has no interest in Ukraine, no positive interest in Ukraine. He has a lot of very, very positive interest in Russia. Yeah, and talk about retreat and talk about wanting a deal and interests. Iran's foreign minister said that U.S. negotiations on a deal with Iran are on the right track and that a nuclear agreement could be within reach. Unspecified Iranian sources told a Qatari-owned London-based outlet that, and this is yesterday, that the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks are progressing beyond belief. That they're very close to a deal. A deal will be cut. And I'll make a prediction now. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Ukraine because I think Zelensky will keep saying no. And I'm not sure to what extent Trump is willing to accept that. So I don't know exactly what is going to happen with Ukraine. But let me make a prediction about Iran. I think there will be a deal. I think the deal will look a lot like the Obama deal, but it'll be different enough in insignificant ways for Trump to be able to declare this the greatest deal in human history, and very different than the deal that Obama cut. This is a deal that Trump exited. As part of the deal, there's no question part of this deal, sanctions on Iran will be lifted. Trade with Iran will be renewed. And here, and with Russia, one of the important things for Trump is he wants to see oil flow. He wants both the Iranian oil and the Russian oil to flow in world markets because that will lower the price of oil, which is something that he's promised. Of course, lowering the price of oil actually reduces the incentives of Americans to drill. So drill, baby, drill won't happen, particularly if we open up the spigot from Iran and from Russia. But oil prices generally will be low, which is a good thing. And energy policy will focus on those areas that need to be improved dramatically, like the grid and the mixture of energy and things like that, and environmental regulations, which is the big one. But I think we're going to have an Iran deal. I think we'll actually have it, and I think we'll have it fairly quickly. And I think the reason we'll have it quickly is, look, Trump needs a win. Trump is losing on every front. This is why they're desperately trying to get some outline of some pretend deal with Japan and, I don't know, with Vietnam or whoever, right, India, on trade, because Trump has been losing. He's losing in the Supreme Court. He's losing in the courts in general. He's losing in the stock market, which he cares about. He's losing in the bond market. He's losing the dollar. Dollar's going down. He's has not been able to make a deal between Russia and Ukraine in spite of his promises to do it within 24 hours. I mean, Trump is a loser. He always has been. And he is losing here in ways that I don't think people can ignore. And he needs a win. He needs a win. And I think he'll take a deal with Iran and he'll spin it if for nothing but to be able to tell people he got a win. So that was, I think we'll get a deal with Iran. A bad deal, by the way, a terrible deal. Instead of bombing them into oblivion, we'll get a deal. But then, I'm just a warmonger, so don't pay any attention to me. Okay, what else do we? Oh, Tesla. So a drop in profits of 72%, 71%. Reported earnings yesterday in the first quarter of this year. There was a lot of clamoring among investors that Trump come back and if he's the CEO, behave like a CEO. Musk yesterday, this is another sense in which there's a retreat. Musk yesterday basically promised to leave Doge and come back to Tesla as CEO and reduce his commitment to Doge significantly moving into the future. Tesla stock went up in value today after being down more than 50% from its high because Musk promised to come back. The decline in profits was already priced. That was already anticipated. That they knew. Musk's commitment to come back to Tesla drove the price up a little bit for now. Now, whether Musk is in a position to actually change the dynamics of Tesla and put it back onto a profit growth track and return it to, growing profitability, I don't know. It's hard to tell. But he's giving up the chainsaw and he's picking up his engineering slide ruler. Is that what they use? Slide rulers? Calculator? I don't know. Whatever. He's back at Tesla. So I guess if you own Tesla shares, that is good news. If you believe that what's missing in Tesla, the problems that Tesla has, are fundamentally that Elon Musk is not putting enough time into it. I'm not convinced that's the primary problem at Tesla, but we will wait and see. Supposedly, they are going to roll out their Tesla taxis in Austin in June to compete with Waymo. I now see Waymo in more places. So there was Waymos you couldn't order one, but you could see them driving around. So they were still training. There are Waymos in Atlanta. And I know there's Waymo in Austin, there's Waymo in LA, and these are driverless taxis. Really cool. Really cool. All right, finally, the FDA. I left this for last because I knew this would make your day, and you would now be relieved and happy. The FDA, just before we started the show, right? This is breaking news. Announced today that it is moving to remove all petroleum-based food dyes in the United States. I mean, I just sighed a big sigh of relief. I mean, because, those food dyes, they just might be killing you all. They might not be, but they might just be killing you all. Killing you all. So we're getting rid of dyes, food dyes. I suspect that will have exactly zero impact on the health of Americans. I suspect that'll have... Oh, well, there is one possibility, right? Because they removed the food dyes, it is possible food will get uglier, and therefore people will eat less of it, and that will solve the obesity problem. But short of that, this is going to do nothing to make Americans healthier. It might make food more expensive because companies will have to find substitutes. No more food dyes. Doesn't that make your day? Aren't you excited? I don't eat food dyes anyway. None of the food I eat on a regular basis has any food dye in it. Water doesn't have food dye. Coffee doesn't have food dye. Wine doesn't have food dye. At least I hope not. And the food I eat doesn't have food dye in it. So I guess it doesn't affect me. But you guys will get a lot healthier. A lot healthier. All right, everybody, that is the news for this April 23rd. Hope you enjoyed the show. And don't forget, this is a listener-supported show. So it exists because of financial support we get from you. We raised the first hour is $250. I think this will go into a second. It's going into a second hour. We'll go well into the second hour. Well, it depends how many questions we have. So please consider supporting the show with a sticker maybe, but also with a question, because questions are what are going to keep the show going, right? It might be a very short show because we have very few questions, particularly given Silvanos is like all Silvanos has, $20. He says, hello, Yaron, been busy, but glad to catch you live. Thank you, Silvanos. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate all the support you're giving me, have given me over the years. So thank you. David, $50. The triple evils of mysticism, altruism, and tribalism are so ingrained in our evolutionary psychology. There's no such thing as evolutionary psychology. Anyway, in our evolutionary psychology, it is possible that we have been able to survive so long as a species because of these traits. No, they're not traits. They're not traits. Mysticism, altruism, tribalism are not traits. They're choices. They're ideas. They're ways to evaluate the world out there. Yes, I'll contradict you, David. I enjoy contradicting you. What's the point of asking a question if I say, oh, David, you are right, I am wrong? No, of course not. There's no such thing as ideas that are traits. In that sense, we are blank slate. We are not born with ideas. We're born with capacities, inclinations, but not actual ideas. Altruism is an idea. Tribalism is an idea. Mysticism is an idea. There are ideas about how we should use our mind. And the whole idea of evolutionary psychology, I mean, there's something there, but very little. Very little. That is, there's no question that our brain has a particular structure and a particular, as I said, inclinations and things like that that do shape some behavior, but not in any fundamental way, and not when it comes to ideas. We choose those ideas. That's how we can overcome mysticism, reject altruism and tribalism. Now, we have survived as a species with mysticism, altruism, and tribalism, but not very well. I don't know, the species have been around for 100,000 years. I mean, for 99.999% of that time, life has sucked. Big time. So yeah, we survived, but barely. Barely. Imagine living through the many, many plagues that went through Europe and at some point, like, killed half the population. Imagine living on a tribe in the, I don't know, Siberian steppes or the anywhere in those. It was nasty, brutish, and short. Absolutely. And that's to a large extent because mysticism, altruism, and tribalism. Now, it could very well be that to get to reason, egoism, and capitalism requires 100,000 years. They're just hard concepts. And they require a lot of thinking and a lot of realization and a lot of, induction about human beings, about life, about what's going on. And maybe we needed to try all these false theories first in order to ultimately understand the true theory, the true philosophy. But I wouldn't say that we survived because of them. I'd say we survived in spite of them. In spite of them. And none of them encoded into our DNA. And the fact that we lived in tribes and somehow didn't really depend on other people. I mean, you depend on other people today, too. You have to trade with them. And in a tribe, you have to go and hunt. And somebody else skins and somebody else cooks and you trade with them. And if you go hunting and you lay around and you don't do your job, you're probably going to survive in a tribe. So nothing has changed at that level. You're not dependent on other human beings in the tribe in a way that today you're dependent. You're dependent on the military to defend us from terrorism. You're dependent on the police to protect you from crooks and criminals. And you're dependent on your fellow man to provide you. I mean, how many of you know how to bake bread? Now, I know there are a few of you, but most of us don't know how to bake bread. I have no idea how to bake bread. I mean, no idea. I could look it up on the internet, I guess. But I have no idea. I depend on other people to provide me with bread. There is nothing about that is ingrained in our DNA. What's baked in our DNA is the capacity to produce, use our reason to change our environment around us, and therefore the capacity to trade. value for value. That's it. Now, that creates a certain, the reality is that because of the way we lived our lives originally, there's certain mindsets that human beings have adopted, sets of ideas and culture that people have adopted and have not been willing to question because they lived in a tribe. But that's not because it's in our DNA. It's in our culture. It's in the ideas our witch doctors teach us. And the witch doctor has a huge incentive for you to be a mystic, an altruist, and a tribalist. So the witch doctors will keep teaching us the bad ideas. And it feels like, oh, it's in my DNA. No, it's just they got you when you're young. And from the beginning of time, they've been... But I bet you that even back in tribal times, there were individualists who left the tribe and rebelled against the tribe, and they were mostly killed by the tribe. But they were there. They were there. So no, it's not DNA. It's culture. It's philosophy. It's ideas. It's religion. That is what sustains our tribal behavior. And you're seeing, for example, right now, we're reverting to tribes. Not because we're reverting to something our DNA demands. We're reverting to tribes because we've abandoned reason. Whenever you abandon reason, or if you haven't discovered reason, then the default is the tribe. Because if you abandon reason, you don't know what's going on. If you haven't discovered reason, you don't understand the world out there. And that leads to fear, anxiety. And that fear and anxiety leads you to try to huddle up with other people who feel fear and anxiety. And particularly under the leadership of somebody who tells you, don't worry, there's an afterlife, or don't worry, the spirits are with us, or don't worry, I will lead you to the promised land. So fear and anxiety lead to tribalism, which leads to authoritarianism, always. That's what we're experiencing today. Thank you, David. Jennifer. The Mackinaw Center chose the subject and name for the talk. It's too late to change now, but curious what name you think would have been more reflective of what you plan to say. I think more reflective would be the battle for Western civilization. Maybe the battle for the meaning of Western civilization would be a good topic. And then I would say Western civilization is the Enlightenment, and what we're really battling is for the Enlightenment. And this is just, it sounds like a history talk, right? It sounds like a talk about the nature of the Enlightenment. And I don't want it to be that. I want it to be a rallying cry in support of the Enlightenment as the essence of Western civilization and the basis by which we should defend Western civilization. Anyway, that's the talk I'm going to give anyway. So the fact that we titled it that way doesn't really make any difference to me. I'm going to do the talk that I want to do, I think. Unless somebody tells me, you're not allowed to do that, you're on violation of contract or something. I don't know. Shazbot says, quote from Blackadder III. Blackadder, one of the greatest comedy shows in all of history. You all should watch Blackadder. I think you can get it on Prime. You can get it on the streaming channels. Anyway, here's the quote. I am one of those people who are quite happy to wear cotton, but have no idea how it works. That's right. And you have to remember, what is this in the context of? It's in the context of, and this is history, right? In the context of, before cotton, you wore wool, which was unbelievably uncomfortable, itchy, scratchy. Cotton is this massive innovation. It's this breath of fresh air, cotton and silk. And how to make cotton and how to make clothes with cotton. Originally, the British imported cotton from India until they established their own cotton industry in England. But it revolutionized life. It made life so much more pleasant, so much more enjoyable to be able to wear something made of this relatively soft material that breathes, lets in air, and it was a real revolution at the time. So he has no idea how it works is exactly right. Stephen, Alma Deutscher's first short ballet, Euterpides, something like that, will have a world premiere at Television City in Los Angeles. Oh, wow, cool. On June 5th, 2025, which will include a champagne reception at 8 p.m. presented by the American Contemporary Ballet. Alma Deutscher is this amazing classical music composer, alive today. She's still fairly young. And you should go. I mean, go because it's going to be beautiful and very enjoyable. Go to support romantic classical music by contemporary composers. So, yeah, if you live in the LA area, go. I know Stephen Harper's going. So go. This is great. So just look up Alma Deutsch, Los Angeles, June 5th. It's in Television City. All right. Let's see. Oh, I didn't mention my sponsors. I should really mention my sponsors. So I want to remind everybody that Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the Yaron Brook Show. He is, I think, the world #1 authority on all things fossil fuel, energy, climate change, environmentalism, and particularly from a free market perspective, from a laissez-faire capitalism perspective. Alex is, I don't know, he's influential on energy policy in the Trump administration, I think. His insights and his writing is incredibly insightful. It's super interesting, and you'll get to know what's actually going on. And he also provides you with facts, evidence, talking points. So facts and evidence, and then how to communicate those facts and evidence in a way that nobody else does. So you will become a better communicator, a better thinker, and your knowledge will expand dramatically on these issues. So I highly recommend alexepstein.substack.com. And then, of course, the Ayn Rand Institute is a subscriber. And right now, they're still offering a discount to Yaron Brook Show listeners. Listeners like you can get a discount for Ocon. Ocon is amazing. We'll have 500 people there, all share your values. There'll be a tremendous number of speakers. There'll be a lot of talks. It'll be intellectually stimulating. It'll be socially exciting. There'll be a great poker game, and you can play poker with me. I will be playing poker. And Boston is just a great city for the 4th of July weekend. Just a fantastic city. It's the birthplace of the American Revolution. So join us, and you can get a 10% off if you sign up. Now, you can get the 10% off even if you sign up for the digital subscription where you can watch the talks at home, which is not as much fun, but also cheaper. And you can't play poker digitally. But you can watch the talks from home. You can still get the 10% discount, so use it. You go in to the Ocon and you fill out the form, and then when it has a discount code, you put in 25 YBS10, 25 YBS10 to get your discount. And you can register at aynrand.org/start here. Always when I'm, all this stuff that I'm mentioning about the Ayn Rand Institute, you can get information on aynrand.org/start here. Finally, this show, as I said before, is sponsor, listener supported. It doesn't exist without you people listening on the podcast, you people listening to YouTube after the fact, or you people listening on YouTube and on Twitter right now. We've got over 400 people listening on those two platforms. It's made possible by you when and if you contribute to making it possible. That is, it's your support, your financial support that makes the show possible. So please consider doing that. If you don't listen live on YouTube, I know it's hard, but it's pretty easy ultimately, because you can go to Patreon, patreon.com, and you can make a monthly contribution to the Yaron Brook Show. Just go out of your credit card, charge your credit card on a regular basis, and you don't have to think about it again. And you know you have paid in this exchange of values. You have done your part. You can also do that on PayPal as well. All right, we still have a bunch of questions, so let's keep going. Michael, is Elon Musk distancing himself from Trump so Tesla doesn't go bankrupt, or is he starting to realize Trump is evil? I don't know. I have no insight into Elon Musk, but no, I think he is basically succumbing to pressure from shareholders of Tesla that he needs to get back to work. I think there's also people in the administration, particularly in the cabinet secretaries, who don't like Musk looking over their shoulder and telling them what to do. So they would like him gone. So there's certain pressure from within the administration, and then there's the demands of Tesla shareholders that he come back to the job. Michael, is Elon Musk a fallen hero? Yeah, I think he is. I think his behavior over the last year or so, his political stance, the ideas that he has amplified, definitely have him fallen. The way he approached Doge, the way he approaches Trump, his fawning over Trump, I think that all constitutes fallen. And I think he was. He's a hero in business. He still is a hero in business, and it's time for him to go back to business and back to focus on that and back to creating value. Hopefully he can. Michael, is the Republican donor class completely embarrassed by Trump at this point? Are they plotting a way to curtail his populism? No, I think many of them are embarrassed, and many of them excuse him, rationalize it in their own mind. I certainly don't think they're plotting. I don't think there's any plotting going on. I think there might be plotting with regard to, we need to get in front of him to explain to him why tariffs are bad. But no, I mean, look, he's doing what he promised. They have no right to be surprised. They have no right to be embarrassed and disappointed. This is exactly what they voted for. Exactly what they voted for. So I don't think there's a huge amount of embarrassment going on. I mean, some people are regretting their vote, but I don't know that there's a lot of pressure to get him to be less popular in any kind of sense. I don't see any of that. All right, guys, we're still short about $165. Stickers could get us most of the way to the goal, maybe all of the way to the goal. Wouldn't take much. I mean, $1 sticker, $5 sticker, $10 sticker. Of course, you can also do 100, 500. But anything at this point would be fantastic. We've got a lot of people watching, 180 people watching. It wouldn't take much to get us to our goal of $500 for the 2-hour show, which is where we should be and need to be to make our April monthly numbers. We've only got a week to go. So help me get to the target. That would be greatly appreciated. Michael, why are leftist intellectuals responsible for Donald Trump? Isn't he the exact opposite of everything they represent? He won by bashing them. Yeah, but that's not how ideas work. It's not how ideas work. Leftist intellectuals have for decades and decades and decades and decades been dumbing down Americans. They've been teaching them how not to think, unthinking. They've been destroying our capacity to evaluate evidence. In other words, they've been attacking reason. They've been undermining reason. Trump is the consequence of the tribalism, and that is the result of the unreason And in that sense, leftist intellectuals are responsible for the tribalism. Leftist intellectuals are responsible for the abandonment of reason by big segments of the population in America because they're responsible for educational system. You know, at the end of the day, history is determined by ideas. Ideas. Who has shaped the ideological environment in the United States over the last 100 years? Leftists. So everything bad that is happening in America today is a consequence of the leftists destroying Americans' capacity to think for themselves, driving them towards tribalism, and thus driving them towards Trump. It's their fault. It's their consequence. So it's not that, oh, but wait a minute, Trump argued against them. That's not how change happens. It's not how ideas work in reality. It's not that the ideas of Trump were invented by leftists, although they were, like tariffs or a leftist idea that Trump has embraced. It's not that. It's that what the intellectuals do to the human mind, to the capacity to understand ideas, to hold ideas, they've destroyed it. And we're living through the consequence of that, living through that, right, as we speak. Michael, is Tom Homan an out-and-out fascist? I doubt it. He is an out-and-out hater of immigrants. He is definitely a believer in a much more robust executive branch, and he's a nasty guy who enjoys, I think, persecuting immigrants. I don't know that he's an out-and-out fascist, if he'd be willing to give up the Constitution and just shift American political system towards a fascist one. I don't know him well enough to be able to say that, but I don't see any indication that's it. He is a really, really nasty human being. He's a bad human being and a nasty human being who is willing to, you know, do anything in order to achieve his numbers. Right? He is anti-immigration. I don't buy this. Anybody who's really anti-illegal immigration is also anti-immigration. Everybody who's anti-illegal immigration is also anti-immigration because none of them propose as the solution for illegal immigration to legalize it, to make immigration easier, to allow more people to immigrate to the United States legally. So this idea, oh, I'm only against illegal immigration, I love immigrants, I don't believe you. People who are anti, particularly those who are vicious, particularly those who are aggressive, particularly those who have come to the point, like Tom Homan is, where they treat illegal immigrants as animals. They don't even count as human beings. They have no rights. They have no due process rights. They have no rights, period. Those people hate immigrants. They hate immigration. They hate the idea of immigration. And they use the illegal stuff as a cover, as a screen, as a pretense. They might even try to convince themselves of that. But they're just lying to themselves and to all of us. J.J. Collin, thank you. A $20 sticker, and it's his first super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Darlene, thank you for the sticker. Mike, thank you for the sticker. John, thank you for the sticker. Alan, thank you for the sticker. You guys are great. You responded to my ask. Eyal, thank you for the sticker. There are a ton of you out there who haven't yet responded to the ask, so come on board. Join your fellow listeners to the Yaron Brook Show in doing a sticker in support of the show. In this value for value trade that we're engaged in. Particular, thank you to JJ for doing his first super chat. You too can do your first super chat. It's really easy. Ask JJ. Shahzbot, if environmentalism in places like Los Angeles have a difficult time paying for air conditioning, if environmentalists in places like Los Angeles have a difficult time paying for air conditioning, might it encourage them to reconsider their views? That kind of thing is hard to miss. Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt it. Because they will just say, yeah, I mean, air conditioning is a luxury. life is about suffering. It brings me closer to nature not having air conditioning. It's not obvious that that's their response, and then is that going to encourage them to think of all their views? They might think, oh, well, we need air conditioning, but we still need to protect the desert rats or the whatever, snail. So no, I don't think facts about reality, even when they hit home in terms of behavior, really cause people to rethink their beliefs in a fundamental way. All right, esoteric dichotomy. Hey, Yaron, would you consider it immoral to marry an AI, assume it is embodied in a human-like body and is smart but lacks true sapiens self? Yeah, it would be a complete delusion and a fake. You know that the visibility you're getting out of the relationship is not real visibility, that it's just programmed to give you that there's no self there that is projecting back to you, so you're not getting anything back. It might be I'm not saying it couldn't be a good date or a good romp, but marry, have a long-term relationship with, that would be, completely to delude yourself, to fake yourself, to detach yourself from reality, and would have very detrimental psychological consequences. Esoteric dichotomy. Is it secondhanded or another failing if someone accumulates vast fortune for their estate legacy, so an AI clone inherit it, lives for them? I don't know what an AI clone is, and it's not secondhanded. It just seems nobody can live for you. How can somebody live for you? There's no such thing. So again, it's delusional. Nobody can live for you. Only you can live for yourself. It would be great if we could upload our consciousness to an AI and live a robot's life, but that's just not, that's science fiction stuff, and it's certainly not real. So, I think it's just silly and delusional, and it negates the idea that nobody can really live for you. Only you can live. Paul, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it. We're chipping away, guys. Still $78 to go, but we're chipping away. So please consider, like Paul, like a $20 sticker, $5, $10, $2, $1, whatever you can. David, thank you, David, as well. I missed David before. All right, Ori. Have you heard of the YouTube channel called The Western Spirit? He's an Israeli guy, relatively new. Maybe see if he would interview you. What's his name? I'm interviewing with some Israeli podcaster tomorrow. It might be The Western Spirit. I don't know. I don't know. No, this is a different one. This guy's podcast is Making History. So, but The Western Spirit sounds familiar. I must have heard of it, and yeah, I definitely, if you know him or if you are connected, let him know. I'd definitely be interested in doing his podcast. I'm doing this podcast with Ran Levy tomorrow. Not sure when it will be broadcast. Equal to reality. I've just finished reading Atlas Shrugged for the third time, and the Trump administration looks like Mr. Thompsons Admin in there. Luda irrationality. Yeah, absolutely. Irrationality is the key. And irrationality, ultimately, they all look the same because they're all basically irrational. And that is Ariel Whiteman. It sounds really familiar. I generally love to speak to anybody. Enric, does the stock market reflect the economy or just the larger corporations, many getting exemptions? Is the econ impact much worse than reflected in the Dow? Yeah, the stock market is primarily reflective of big corporations. Now, big corporations are very sensitive to small business because small business interacts with big corporations on a business level, but also the failure of small businesses would lead to few individuals interacting with big business. So Big business is not, it's businesses directly impacted by what happens to the rest of the economy. So it's a pretty good proxy for what's going on with the economy. But yes, things could be a lot worse in the rest of the economy than with these companies who might get particular exemptions or even subsidies to compensate them, whereas small and medium-sized businesses will not. Will not. Michael, is the economy still growing faster than the government? I don't know. I don't know, because we don't have a budget yet, so we don't know how big the government is growing, and we don't know how fast the economy is growing. But certainly during Biden's term, and maybe even during Trump's first term, the government grew faster than the economy. It was growing at more than 2% a year. So I don't think the economy is systematically growing faster than the government. Quite the contrary. Sir Brixton, extremely impressive how someone as stupid and short-sighted as Trump can win 2 terms as president of the United States. How do people so unqualified find themselves in the Oval Office? Well, it says something about the American public. It says something about their willingness to tolerate such stupidity and short-sightedness. But it also says something about the opposition. It says something about how bad the Democrats are and how fed up Americans were of the left. So I think that, we have an electorate that is not particularly intelligent. It doesn't understand economics. It doesn't understand the Constitution. It doesn't understand what individual rights mean. And they're easily impacted by demagogues and by fear-mongering, which is what Trump is a master at. This is what you get. And some of it's a reaction against the left and the evil that is the left. But some of it's just they're not that smart. They're not smarter than Trump. They're just as stupid. Peter, couldn't Canada become super rich by lowering corporate taxes, have 0 tariffs with the U.S. and Chinese imports, and then invite U.S. businesses to relocate? Yeah, absolutely. They should also lower taxes, lower individual taxes. Imagine Canada lowered corporate taxes to 0, which is their only appropriate corporate tax. Imagine if they deregulated, so it became really, really easy to start a business in Canada. Yeah, I mean, every country can do that. I mean, the reality is that it's super easy to become rich as a country. The principles are well known. It's having the political will to follow through on the principles, which is the challenge. Kabuta, how different were the 8-second options from the back? The second opinions from the back doctors. They were all the same. Diagnosis was the same. Recommendment, treatment was the same. Maybe one was different. One said, "Oh, you should do some more physical therapy," and I dismissed him completely because it was clear that was not helping. But pretty much everybody said you need diffusion. There's nothing else we can do for you other than fusion. And they all, pretty much all of them, I think, if I remember right, all were suggesting arthroscopic surgery to do the fusion. So they put holes in and they use a little robot and stuff like that. Although I'm not sure if they'd seen how the actual condition of my back, given that I had a previous surgery, which was not arthroscopic there, all the scar tissue that was there, I'm not sure they would have followed through with that. But I chose the doctor who I thought was really committed the most to arthroscopic, who was the most informative, had a lot of experience, but also young and a little ambitious. And as it happened, an immigrant, and not just an immigrant from Egypt, a Coptic Christian from Egypt. And he was great. He actually did 2 surgeries on my back, ultimately. But everybody agreed. I mean, the MRI was pretty conclusive. Apollo Zeus, happy National Cherry Cheesecake. God, why would you put cherry on a cheesecake? Like, cheesecake is such a perfect dessert. Like a good New York cheesecake with less sugar than usual is so good. It's one of the few desserts I don't mind cheating on. But once you put a cherry syrup, it makes it way too sweet. Much too sweet. Neo, the U.S. is bombing the hell out of the Yemen, but it doesn't seem to be working. What's more can the U.S. do? From a cost perspective, it's getting expensive. Yeah, because they're not effective in the bombing. They don't want to kill anybody. They're very selectively, they're only selectively destroying infrastructure. They don't want to hurt the civilian population. You gotta bomb where it really hurts and things that cannot be easily replaced. And you've got to realize that the Houthis are just a satellite of Iran. And you probably can't win with the Houthis unless you take out Iran. By the way, one of the deals of the Iran deal will be something with the Houthis. That'll be part of it. And finally, the best thing you could have done is gone to the Saudis and gone to the other people in Yemen who've been fighting a civil war with the Houthis for years now and said, look, we will arm you to the teeth and we will support you completely. And we will bomb the Houthis, but on condition that you commit to invading and destroying them. I mean, we have allies who would love to get rid of the Houthis. Those allies don't trust America. They don't believe that we will follow through. So we would have to show them that we will follow through. And yeah, the Houthis could be defeated with American support, particularly American air support, fairly easily. But we would have to say to these other parties and provide them with weapons. I mean, the Saudis fought the Houthis for a long time, but the U.S. under Biden kept telling him to stop, stop, stop. It's not humane. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. And ultimately, they stopped. Oh God, there's a guy here who just wants to, you know that you want to debate when the supporters of the other guy come to your channel and just keep writing on your channel, you lost, you lost, you lost. Somehow I must have gotten under this guy's skin enough during the debate, which to me would be a victory, to get him motivated enough to keep coming to my thing, to keep telling you lost, like a little crybaby, which, yeah, I mean, I'll take that as a win. I won the debate to a large extent because you don't even understand what the debate was about, don't understand how horrible, your guy was and how irrational he was, how absolutely irrational and detached from reality he was, because you don't even understand the philosophical concept that we're dealing with. He doesn't understand them because he's a complete rationalist, divorced from reality, because he's a religionist, which divorces you completely from reality. So anyway, thank you for confirming the fact that I got under your skin and did well enough in the debate to get under the skin of his supporters. Let's see. Rue, can you give us a positive recommendation? TV show, movie, artwork, book, music, anything? Sure. I just started watching something that I think you guys recommended to me a while ago, but I've finally been able to watch it. Is 1883, the Western. It's pretty brutal, but it's fun to watch, and they're real heroes and they're real good guys. I also think that the female character so far, I mean, she's really good. She's really good. Her dialogue, she's the one narrating it. Her narration is excellent. Really, really, really excellent. Yeah, that I think is enjoyable so far. Andor is starting yesterday, I guess, second season on Disney Plus. And Andor, the first season was really good. Heroic, smart, focused on characters, good characterization. So yeah, I would definitely watch Andor. And what else do we have? I mean, there's so much. I mean, there's so many. You probably heard my Korean drama recommendations. I'm trying to think of a good movie I just watched. I don't know if you'll enjoy this. I really enjoyed it. There are 4 movies as part of a franchise, a series out of Japan called Kingdom 1, Kingdom 2, Kingdom 3, Kingdom 4, which are fun. Heroes, hero worship, based on history, but not really. I mean, they're made up, and there's a fantasy element to them. But they're definitely worthwhile watching and enjoyable and heroic. No real cynicism. Michael, is there any fundamental difference between MAGA and the Nazis? Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, some people in MAGA are Nazis, but other people in MAGA are not Nazis. Nazis are a particular form of fascism. Not all MAGA are anti-Semites. MAGA, for the most part, is not ready for concentration camps. MAGA has not really expressed itself. Parts of it have, but not all of it. Of the rejection of the Constitution, the rejection of the American system of government, and going all full-on authoritarian. I think we need to be careful not to overdo it. Yeah. So there's no reason to call them Nazis. There's nothing to be gained from it. It's important to understand the Nazis, where they came from, to see the similarities, to see the differences. Yeah, they're more like Peronists. They're populists, much more than, again, and particularly Trump. Trump is not a Nazi, primarily because Trump has no ideology. The Nazis have an ideology, have a clear-cut, unequivocal ideology. Oh, what did I just do? EL says, what do you think the government reaction would be if bird flu started spreading significantly among humans? Oh, God, I don't know. I mean, RFK, they wouldn't have warp speed. They wouldn't design a vaccine because RFK would be against it. And MAGA would be against it. So Trump would be against it. I think they just let it rip. And RFK would tell you to take your vitamins and I don't know, eat a salad every day. I don't know. I think it would be horrible. As bad as Trump's reaction to COVID was, I think a second COVID would be worse. I mean, I think at the state level there would be lockups, but I don't think at the federal level he would do lockups because he's come out against them now. So now they're not acceptable, so they wouldn't be. So that's good. But anything else, there'd be no... Science would be crippled by pseudoscience. They'd be promoting pseudoscience left and right. It would be really, really, really bad. What do you think of the government reaction? Oh, that was what he asked. Robert, ask and ye shall receive. More of us need to do that. Engage friends, get out the word, do more. Take some well-considered chances, get some dirt under your fingernails, and go Team Dagny. Absolutely. We got to get more active. Everybody need to get more active. We need to get, yeah. All right, all we need, guys, $33. $33 to make our goal. That is not that hard. And only 2 questions, and they're short. So We've got like 3 minutes to get $33. Somebody, do a sticker. Do a question, even better. Stephen Harper says, yes, I will attend Alma Deutscher's ballet premiere in LA on June 5th. Alma is just 20. Yeah, it's amazing. She's had such a career, and she's only 20 because she started so young. Shahzad, who is Jay Dyer? Jay Dyer is a guy I debated online. He is a Orthodox Christian, Orthodox church, a complete rationalist, who, uses terminology without connecting it to reality, without connecting it to facts of reality. Everything is a floating abstraction. So it's almost impossible to debate them because the only way to debate them and get a response from them is on their terms. But once you accept their terms, you've lost the debate because their terms are wrong. And yet you can't move them to your terms because they literally won't connect to reality. They won't define their terms. Now, I don't remember the details of the debate, but he just wouldn't. He kept arguing based on concepts that were complete floating abstractions. And every time I try to anchor them in any kind of way, and my point was, in the debate was, we have completely different epistemologies. Your epistemology is based on mysticism. It's circular. And, once you accept the essential mystical premises, you can't disprove it from within because it's circular. But you can't, it doesn't give you any value in reality. It doesn't give you any access to reality. It doesn't give you any real knowledge about reality. So, but it's a dead end. Debating them is a complete and utter dead end. It doesn't go anywhere except to illustrate how dramatically different the objectivist epistemology is from a rationalist Christian epistemology. The kind of scholastic type epistemology. All right, guys, thank you. You guys came through. Stinger Bell, $50. Thank you, Stinger. Hello, Yaron. I've got a job interview for an engineering position based in Orange County, California. I'm leaning towards taking the position, if offered. What cost of living expense should be considered when negotiating a starting salary? Well, I don't know where you're coming from. And I don't know where, but Orange County is expensive. The primary thing that's expensive in Orange County is housing. Housing is very expensive. And so expect, depending on where you're moving from, potentially a smaller house and particularly less yard, less of a yard around the house. But look, Orange County is one of the most amazing places in the world to live. It's certainly the most amazing place I've ever lived. It's comfortable, it's easy, it's new, it's clean, it's safe, it's super safe. But it is expensive to live there, particularly housing. Other stuff is probably very similar to the rest of the country, but housing is expensive. So I don't know. I would look at houses that you would want to live in. I would compare them to where you live today, and then adjust your salary based on that, or your salary ask based on that. But they should give you a significant boost just for living in California, particularly Orange County. Orange County has perfect weather, almost perfect weather. Beaches are beautiful, although you can't swim. Good restaurants, good shopping. Yeah, it's just a great place to live. But yeah, you need to earn more. Richard, have you read Tim Soderford's essay, The Politics of Star Trek? It contrasts the Cold War influence on the original series with the equivocation of the next generation. No, I haven't read it. Sounds interesting. Yeah, I mean, I like some of Tim's. I like Tim's work, so that sounds interesting. Thank you. Hector, this is a quote. I recently became a dual citizen, originally from the United States and just gained Mexican citizenship. What are some meaningful or practical ways I can make the most of my dual citizenship? You know, I don't know. I mean, you could move to Mexico. You could start a business in Mexico. You could figure out I don't know if there are tax advantages, because being a dual citizen, you still have to pay U.S. taxes. But there might be, if you have a business, there might be better regulations. There might be better tax situations for business in Mexico. So you'd have to think about income and taxes. The nice thing is you can go into Mexico and come into the United States with no problem. You don't need a visa. Nobody's going to look at your look at your passport, not more than that. You can go in and out easily. You can own homes in different places. Mexico has some restrictions on Americans owning homes, owning property. If you have a Mexican citizenship, you don't have that. So things like that. And of course, if America goes all out fascist, you can move to Mexico. M. Azhan, do you watch or follow sports? F1 racing or soccer or anything else? I do not watch F1. I've never watched F1. On occasion I watch soccer. Primarily, I like the World Cup. I get into the World Cup. I watch a lot of matches during the World Cup. It's always fun. I have my favorite teams, and generally I like to watch the World. I like to watch soccer. I just don't like to put in a lot of work into it. I don't watch really any other sport other than basketball. I love basketball, but even there, I watch the playoffs now. I think there's a game tonight. I think the Celtics are playing tonight, so I might catch part of the game. I don't watch. I used to watch baseball. I like going to baseball games. I like watching baseball live, but not as much on television. So I'll watch the Celtics. I won't watch basketball if it's not the Celtics. Like, for me, sports, I have to root for somebody. If I'm not rooting for somebody, I get bored. I like the Olympics, so I watch a lot of the Olympics because I like just to see great achievement. And it's all concentrated. I could spend 2 weeks watching the Olympics and it's over. And I don't have to waste more time. I like beach volleyball at the Olympics, but I won't go and watch a beach volleyball on the beach or anything like that, or in a stadium or something like that. So no, basketball is the only sport I watch right now. On any kind of I wouldn't even call it regular, but on a semi-regular basis. Everything else is only when there's special tournaments or special things. I hate boxing. I hate UFC. I hate violent sports. I used to watch football. I can't watch football anymore. I don't find violence entertaining. Chad, my thoughts about the Jay Dyer debate. If you really believed man was made in God's image, he wouldn't have such a bad haircut. It's disrespectful to God, is what you're saying. He's disrespecting God by having such a bad haircut. All right. Okay, on that comic note, thank you, Chad. Thanks, everybody. We made our target. Really, really appreciate that. We actually exceeded it by 10%. That's always good. I will see you guys tomorrow. Not sure exactly what time. Probably early. Might be 1 o'clock tomorrow, East Coast time. It's either 1 or like 4:15 or something like that. Friday, it'll be at 4:15. So I'll see you guys there. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody.